Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. First of all, I want to thank my sponsors, the Health Channel. So please sign up for their newsletter, anything regarding with your health. And if you need any office space, whether if it's an hour, a boardroom, a month or a year, Alexa's workspaces can help you in any way they can, even if it's virtual also. So Jose, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I just heard off the record that that they've been calling you a kaleidoscope because you bring a whole array of colors.
Yeah, our mutual good friend Janet Gonzalez recently described me as a kaleidoscope. I used to describe myself as an onion, multi-layered.
Oh,
But her description is better because it's about facets and color and light, and that's so much better for me. So I'm embracing the kaleidoscope of it all.
because I work with you on the photography side, but
Mhm,
you also sing, you're a musician, you have
mhm.
an amazing word with amazing way of expressing yourself in poetry.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's like a combination of all this artistic creativity explosion.
Yeah, I feel like I've been very fortunate. I think at a young age, I understood that creativity can be applied in more than one genre, in more than one subject, in more than one direction. And I embraced creativity as my lane. When a lot of people were telling me when I was a younger man to pick a lane, to choose one thing to do.
Correct.
And that never really felt right to me. So I chose creativity in general. And it's interesting because now at this point in my life, um, you know, unlike a lot of people who are creative and when they're young, they begin to blossom and they, bloom through their creativity. Um, I think I've spent all of this time collecting skill. And so now my flower is beginning to bloom. And it's really, really nice. It's really nice.
So what part do you like the most?
Um, I really just enjoy making things. For me, my mind works as a puzzle maker. So creativity in general to me is taking raw ingredients and making them into something whole. So it's just like a puzzle. You take the different pieces of the puzzle and you put them together and you get the picture in the end. So whatever that is, if it's a song, the notes and the color and the rhythm of the song are the puzzle pieces. If it's photography, if it's your event, if it's Power of the Heels fundraiser, um, all the people there and the atmosphere there and your vision are the puzzle pieces. And it's my job to put those puzzle pieces together, in this case, literally in pictures.
Well, when you talk about puzzles, my whole workshop is based on a puzzle
Oh, how
because
cool.
events are literally pieces of the puzzle, and you need to have
Yes,
all the pieces together in order to make an event.
yes. And unlike a flat puzzle, I mean, we're using that analogy, which is a simplified version. For you in your work, I've done event work myself. So I'm not just empathetic. I know exactly what it is you're working at. There's so many not only pieces but moving parts. You're dealing with this vendor and that vendor, whether you're dealing with a vendor to do a table at the event, or you're dealing with a caterer, or you're dealing with the bartenders, or then you're dealing with staff. So all of those pieces have to come together. And a lot of people don't see those behind the scenes pieces, but it is a puzzle. That is a three-dimensional sort of spherical puzzle. And it's amazing that I'm going to pay you a compliment now that event was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. So all those puzzle pieces came together beautifully. And in
And
the end,
you do not control any of the pieces.
exactly. Exactly. Well, all you can do is sort of maneuver them, but you can't
Yeah.
necessarily control them because, what happens when you have a sound guy or a DJ or somebody who just doesn't show up or shows up later than you expected them to do. You have to then pick up those pieces and reform them to whatever it has to be. So it's really kind of magical. And for people who can do that, I think it's really amazing that your mind can work in that way. And I mean, I saw you that day so calm in the way that you were executing, which to me is the epitome of professionalism in that work. Because I've also worked with people in events who run around like chickens with their heads cut off, and everything sort of falls apart as a result, right? So you lending that kind of calm and that kind of organization to it really sort of held the whole thing together. So if people have questions, they walk up to you and they're seeing somebody who is organized and calm, then they stay calm and everything sort of comes together really well. So it was
Thank
quite
you.
beautiful. You're
Thank you,
welcome.
because it was really a challenge.
Of
It was a
course. Of
challenge
course.
of bringing everything together, being the first time. And for those who do not know, it was the Power of the Heels event, a women's retreat. So our challenge was to bring women together for a whole day retreat that I haven't done. I've never had done a retreat, especially a whole day of bringing content. And you were the man behind the Power of the Heels
I,
and
I could not take such credit.
capturing the memories. So, what do you see behind that lens?
Again, we go back to the puzzle analogy because you know I'll tell you what my process is. Um, I prepare for shoots pretty much the same way every time, and it doesn't really matter what the shoot is. You put together your gear and all that stuff and blah blah blah. That's
Yeah,
quite boring.
like a checklist. Yeah.
Exactly. You
Mhm.
make your checklists and you figure out the things you're supposed to shoot and how you're supposed to shoot them. In this case, for instance, I've never been to the venue. So you prepare things just in case you're going to need them. If you don't know the venue, you don't know what the light's like, you don't know what the space is like, how you can move through that space, and all of those things you have to figure out on site. And for me, excuse me, that's a very exciting part of it to me is walking into a place and having to, most of my job is solving problems. It's actually not snapping photographs. Um,
What do you mean is
so
solving problems?
it's solving problems.
Go back.
For
Why?
instance, you did your checklist, and you packed all your things, and you put your gear in your car, and you get to the venue. The venue is an hour away from home, and you forgot something crucial, right? You have to solve that problem on site because there's nothing you can do about the fact that that
Correct.
thing got left behind, right? There's nothing you can do about that. Um, in the venue that we were in, it was outdoors, but because it was under the large wooden palapa, that was the wood itself was dark, it presented a dark room. So
Correct.
that means so that means I have to solve the problem of what happens through my lens based on that room in order to get the best photographs I could possibly get. Now, one of the things that I was really, really happy about in the results was that I brought a lens, which is a vintage lens, and I love buying vintage stuff and using vintage gear. So I brought a vintage lens, and my plan for that vintage lens was to take photographs from afar, it's a long lens, and process those photos as black and whites. So we would have two sets of mood to the event because that lens gives me a very specific, it's like the kids using filters now, right? That lens gives
Correct.
me a certain vintage feel. that makes great black and whites. Um, so figuring all those things out as I'm on site, figuring out that the configuration of tables. How can I move once these tables are occupied with people? How can I move between these tables in a way that's efficient, that's not getting in the audience's way, and that's keeping a clear line of sight to the stage, right? So all of those things are little tiny things that you have to solve on site, and I think those things are fun.
And that's when people ask me, why do you need the photographer there so early? And it's because of that.
Right.
Because you need to figure out where you're going to be, what's the layout, what's important to catch and what's not.
Yeah. Yeah, and the movement aspect of it is also really interesting to me. That's another puzzle piece, right? Because I need to move it. My relationship to the event has to be very specific in my view. I don't know if other shooters think of it this way, but this is the way I think of it. My relationship to the event has to be very specific in that there are times that I need to be seen and I need to interact with audience members, and there are times where I need to be invisible, right?
I
Where
understand. Correct. Yeah.
there are times when I'm taking where I see a particular shot that I want to take, but I don't want the subject to be aware that I'm taking it, which means I need to be completely invisible somehow.
Invisible, because those
So
are the
that's
best.
right. So that's ducking behind a speaker or shooting from around a pole, or I'm shooting in one direction and there's a person next to me, and I sort of use that person as a way to kind of camouflage myself, right? And then there's times where I need to be right up and right forward. In I want a picture of a specific person and I want it to be sort of a portrait. Then I have to establish a relationship with that person almost in an instant in order to get the most beautiful photograph of them I can. Because these are people that don't know me at all. So
Correct.
to me, that's it for me, and I'm proud of that. That for me is a gift. Um, Being able to set people at their ease almost instantaneously. And if I don't do it the first time I see you and I talk to you, I'll do it the second time I see you and I talk to you. I might talk to somebody, say hello, compliment something that they're wearing or their makeup or whatever, and not make a photograph of them until 10 or 15 minutes later. In which case I've set up the photograph ahead of time.
The most important part, or not the most important part, was when I looked at the pictures, the commonality of all the pictures was that everybody was showing such a graceful and happy feeling, which I
Exactly.
love that you were able to capture that.
Exactly. And that, I mean, I think that's mostly about them feeling really good in the space, which I can totally understand why they felt really good in the space. It was a fantastic energy there. As a matter of fact, it makes me want to only work with women
With
because that space was so amazing, right? Um, and when people are feeling that kind of comfortable, that's most of the job. But then I
correct.
have to, as being one of the only two men interacting with the women, right? I have to be able to make people feel okay being photographed, especially when it comes from a man, so that it's not a feeling of there's no because there's kind of an automatic kind of brace
I
or you
correct.
know
And I
um,
didn't felt that they felt uncomfortable or anything. So you
no,
were
they
able to
definitely didn't because the proof is
capture
in the
the whole
pictures.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, the proof is in the pictures. And even those people who I might go up to and they say, "Oh, I don't like taking photographs," that's a problem I have to solve because that may be a very important person in the whole of the event, and I have to be able to set them at their ease in
To
order to be able
win
to get
them
the
back.
photograph.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
So I have another a question for you.
sure.
What has been your favorite photo shoot or a real nice, memorable picture?
Well,
One that brings
well,
you that laugh.
well, the thing about my memory is in photos, is in frames. Um,
Okay.
so I can remember probably 80% of the photographs that I've shot the moment I take that photograph. Um, and because of my ability to um, make people feel good, right? To me, my job when I'm working with people is to make people feel beautiful. The equation's simple. If I can make you feel beautiful, then I can make a beautiful photograph of you because you're in a place that is relaxed, that's feeling energetic, that's feeling happy, or whatever that happens to be, right? So those things go hand in hand. Um, and so I can remember loads of photographs that were some of my absolute favorites.
Will
Um,
one stand out?
it's hard to choose one. I there is one that I can that wasn't that long ago. Um, I have three great nieces, and in Spanish they would call me tío abuelo, right? But I don't
Okay.
like tío abuelo, so I have now designated myself and my wife as super tío and super
Super
tía.
tío,
Super tío. So I'm now
super
super tío.
uncle.
I'm not instead of just tío, I'm now super tío, which is tío abuelo basically. Um, so I have three great nieces, and one of my great nieces for her first birthday, her mom asked me to do a photo shoot of her, and we went to several places. We did the photographs over 2 days, but on the first day, we ended up at the beach at Key Biscayne, and we were taking a series of photographs of her in a little Moana outfit. She was wearing a little Moana diaper with her little Moana necklace, and it was really, really adorable. And there are many frames from that particular setup that I really love. There are two specifically. One, uh, we had her standing by a log. So I'm on this side of the log, she's on that side of the log. And she has this expression, and it's just seemed like a little mermaid had just swum up to me. And there's just unbelievable expression on her face. And then there's another one, and this is probably my favorite of recent. I call it La Diosita del Mar, the little sea goddess. And she's sitting at the edge of the water, just with the water lapping on her lap, her legs crisscrossed. Her hands are on her knees, on either knees, and she's looking at me with the most regal kind of look, sitting up really straight. And it is just such a beautiful picture. And I can honestly say for myself, it's one of the most amazing photographs I've ever taken. I have to send it to you.
You see that you have one that really stuck up. So what have been one of the biggest challenges before I go to the oops?
One of the biggest challenges, I would say that you mean in photography in general?
Yeah.
I would say that one of the biggest challenges in photography, especially these days, is the proliferation of mobile technology. Um, because really and truly, this is what is the equivalent when we were kids, what is the equivalent to a professional camera? This would have been a $10,000 camera when I was a kid,
Correct.
right? Um, and as a result, people think that they can easily do what I do, right? Um, and the way that that translates is that translates in the sort of monetary devaluing of what I do as a professional. So people will haggle and not assume that what I do is worth what I'm asking, right? Because they feel like, oh, somebody else
Oh,
could
I
do it.
can take, yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
I
I
can
can
take it
take
on
a
my
picture.
iPhone. or I can have my uncle who bought a, Nikon Z whatever camera. I can have him do the photographs, and it would cost me almost nothing. Well, yes, but Uncle Ralph does not have command of space, does not have command of light, does not know timing, doesn't have the experience to know the shots that need to be taken when they need to be taken. So Uncle Ralph is probably going to miss, if it's your wedding, for instance, he's probably going to miss that his camera needs to be set differently outside to inside. He's probably going to miss that kiss.
That you can't
Absolutely,
because you're not part of the whole party and you're looking it at another level.
you
And
cannot
that is
miss that shot,
correct.
right? Uncle Ralph may not have the understanding of the urgency of all of these things in an event, right? The rings going onto the fingers, right? If I'm shooting that, I need to shoot the approach all the way till the ring gets on the finger and the expression
Yeah,
afterwards,
they
right?
just shoot a certain way, but they don't have the trained eye
Right,
to
right,
capture those moments.
right,
But
and
what
often
about
not the timing.
that's a big challenge.
Yeah,
It's like bringing the value of what you do to a profession that has been wholesaled.
right. And the interesting thing about that is, so for instance, for a wedding, or I'm privileged to be there for people's once in a lifetime occasions, weddings, quinceañeras, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, 50th birthday parties,
Any
first
social
birthdays,
event.
right? Whether it's actually shooting an event or shooting portraiture, whatever it is, those are once in a lifetime events. Um, and what people often don't think about is that the thing that you're left with after that event is the media,
Yeah.
because the event usually goes by really fast. You're involved with all the guests and all this stuff going on, all this running around. So you're not really experiencing that
Or
event
you experience it after.
after, through
Correct.
the images,
Yeah.
be it video or photography, which means that video and photography for any of those types of events should probably be within the top 5 line items on your budget.
Well, when they come to me and they say, yes, Uncle Ralph is gonna take the picture, I remind them that we cannot go back and take the pictures again.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
is the one thing that people regret not doing.
yeah,
They
yeah,
don't do it. Because
yeah,
when they see the pictures, because at that time, you don't have the time to go and say, oh, show me the picture, let me know if it was okay. Because the event,
correct,
as you said, goes really fast. So
correct.
those are the kinds of things that it's up there, like one of the 5 things that you really need to have. And yes, you're right. And that's what I tell
Yeah,
them. Most of the time, there has never been one person that has regretted having a photographer. They always regret not having one.
not having a photographer, or they say, and I've had clients say this to me, that's too much money. I know somebody who will do it for a third of
Oh,
that.
but that is in every profession. I remember one time that the wedding wire, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, the wedding wire came with an article and you clicked and put your zip code on how much you had to be paid for wedding planning.
Hmm.
And I remember I clicked on it, I put my zip code, and it was, I think, $1,000 for a wedding. So I did the calculations and it came out to like 25 cents an hour.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
wait a second. So yes, there are people that will do your job uh, in a much less price,
Well,
but
yeah,
it's
but
sometimes they say you get what you pay for.
and I think that that's true definitely in photography. Um, you know, when you, and not that's not to say that you don't have anomalies on either end of that stick.
No,
That's
no,
not to say that you
correct.
can find
It is
a super
not
cost-effective photographer that's fantastic, or you can find a super expensive photographer that's absolute crap. Of
correct.
course,
And
that happens.
I'm not diminishing anyone, but I think that the value of your professional service, you know it.
Right, right,
And
right,
there's people for everything.
right. And for
That's
me,
the
that's been a
beauty.
challenge moving markets because I moved about a year and a half ago. I moved to Miami from Los Angeles, so
Oh,
I had already established my professional value in Los Angeles. So moving to Miami and having to change markets, now I'm having to learn all of those things that are involved in the Miami market, and the Miami market is significantly, can I put
different,
this delicately, different
different.
than the Los
Yes.
Angeles market. Um,
And remember,
so,
you are in the second city of Latin America. So there's
right,
always everyone that will do it much better than you and cheaper than you.
right, right.
And that's when you
So
need
it's,
to value what you do and say, no.
yeah, yeah. I'm finding myself needing to stick to my guns more, and say, that's something I can't compromise at this point in my life and my career. I can help you find somebody if you need somebody else,
Correct.
but
Yeah,
I'm
but
probably not your guy.
it's so my last question, because we don't have time for any more. So I didn't get
Mhm.
time to talk to you about the other amazing things that you do, but what has been the biggest oops that you've encountered as a photographer?
The biggest oops. Um, this oops, this is an interesting oops because it's not really an oops, but it feels like an oops. One of the first real estate photography jobs that I did here in Miami. Um, I'm new to the area, so I mean, even with all my experience, I'm always nervous when I go to a job. I know what I'm doing, and I know what happens when I pick up my camera, but I passionately want to do a great job for every client. And this job, I took way longer than it needed. Um, and the houses in this area were really close to identical. So when I sent up my drone,
You took the wrong.
I walked to the front of the
Oh,
house next door, thinking it was the house that I was supposed to be at. So I sent
okay.
my drone up and I took drone pictures of the wrong house.
Okay, but at
Um,
least the house is there and you can retake them, and that was your time.
correct,
So
correct.
it's an oops
Um,
and not an oops. It's not
it's
like a
well,
wedding that.
it's an oops and not an oops. Also because the client was particularly meticulous. Um, so she was pretty unforgiving about that oops, which is what makes me feel bad because it's a
But
client.
couldn't you just say, okay, I'll do it over?
Yeah, of course. But she was not particularly patient for that, so I ended up sending somebody else out to make those drone photographs. Um,
Again.
and it turned out that that shooter also shot the interior of the house, as sort of a just in case, and she didn't like either of our photographs.
Oh my
So
God. So you
that's
know
something that I
what?
really can't
Those
do
are the
anything about.
people, those are the people you will never please.
Yeah, that's something that I can't do anything about because my interior shots were fine and his interior shots were fine. And she just didn't like them. So what are you gonna do about
We
that?
cannot please everyone, but definitely you have pleased all the women that were in my event, and you were able to capture that amazing smile of everyone there. So
Yeah,
Jose,
yeah. I was really
thank
happy
you.
with it. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. And to everyone, have an amazing week until next week. And hopefully there will be peace by the following week. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.